Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. We got a bit of a jam-packed show, I would say. We've got Ryan Grimm on to talk about the fallout from impeachment. We've got Zed Jelani on to talk about why France is worried about what our kids are being taught here in the U.S. We also have Ryan Gerdusky on. He's a reporter who broke the initial scandal about the Lincoln Project. There has been massive continued fallout, the co-founders all sort of implicated, and major questions about what they knew and when, so we'll get the very latest from him. But we wanted to start with a gigantic bombshell out of the state of New York and a cover-up from the Cuomo administration.
Do not want to let this story slip by the wayside, despite much in the media who wanted to do so. So basically what happened is on Friday, the story broke that Cuomo's top aide, Melissa DeRosa, she was being questioned by the Democratic legislature in a private setting. She privately apologized to withholding the state's nursing home death toll, telling them that we, quote, froze out of fear that the true numbers would be used against us by federal prosecutors. So this is essentially, Krystal, an admission of a cover-up of the number of deaths in nursing homes, which was a result of the decision by Cuomo and the administration themselves in the early days of the pandemic to place people who had COVID-19 back in the nursing homes, where we have had the vast majority of the deaths, especially in the early days. That decision costs probably thousands of lives. And nobody is saying Cuomo intentionally did this. But since the beginning, and we've been under scrutiny, we've talked about it here, I think almost since May, it's been in the public sphere. Nobody has decided to acknowledge it. Thousands of people lost their lives. And now they are basically admitting that they covered up the actual death toll figures in order to stop scrutiny from the federal prosecutors, but more importantly, and let's be real, from the media, who were never all that curious in the first place.
Well, that is a very good point. And the media's complicity, I think, is an incredibly important part of this story. Cuomo was confronted with this alleged cover-up and failed to issue an apology for the substance. He says he's sorry he created a void. Let's take a listen to his response.
Look, I have said repeatedly, we made a mistake in creating the void. We made a mistake in creating the void. When we didn't provide information, it allowed press, people, cynics, politicians to fill the void. We should have provided more information faster. We were too focused on doing the job and addressing the crisis of the moment.
Focused on doing the job. This is like in a job interview when they're like, what's your greatest weakness? And you're like, oh, I care too much. I just work too hard and I care too much. Just to remind you all, so the initial decision is we're going to allow nursing home patients who have had coronavirus back into the nursing home, okay? Then when he's confronted with that, he accuses this of just being a partisan hit job and nothing to see here, and that's what he's referring to,
multiple times.
Cynics. Yeah. That was his go-to excuse. Meanwhile, the state legislature in the state of New York was requesting more information about exactly what the death toll number was. They totally stonewalled them for months and months and months. At the same time, the Trump Justice Department also requests that same information. Same thing. They delay. And now we're finally getting maybe a full picture of just how severe that death toll was. And this all came out of a report from the Democratic Attorney General, by the way. This is not from Republicans. This is from Letitia James, the Democratic Attorney General, the report that came out there that showed the number of nursing home deaths was maybe as much as 50% higher than what the Cuomo administration was admitting to. They've since had to go and correct the public record, but again, they only did that after they were caught. I mean, that's really the reality here. So to get back to the substance and the context of his aide admitting like, hey, sorry, guys, we just were worried that we're going to get in legal trouble because of the deaths in nursing homes in this catastrophic decision. I mean, this is absolutely outrageous behavior. And add to that the reporting we talked about before from the New York Times that multiple, I think 7 of the top public health officials in the state of New York resigning because of Cuomo disregarding their guidance and their advice. This paints an incredibly damning portrait of a man who was so impressed with his own response that he, declared mission accomplished, published a book about how incredible he was and what an amazing job he did. It's an absolute scandal and disgrace, and I honestly think he should resign. I mean, this was mission critical. And not only did he bungle it, okay, maybe you could forgive that.
You can,
because
if he owned up to it.
It was coming at, this came at New York hard and fast. Everyone was trying to figure out what the best course was. But to lie, to cover up, and to fail to take any responsibility, that's unforgivable.
That is the unforgivable part, because not only that, too, and this is where the media angle comes in, which is that it was so obvious that this man was acting outrageously, writing a book. We covered that poster that he made here, where they conquered coronavirus. Never get cocky with COVID, says the man who wrote a book. Feted by the world's elite, getting literally accepting the award on an Emmy, and I watched this clip of all these celebrities thanking their governor. Thank you so much for the way that you governed yourself during this pandemic and more. And look, this is a person who made a terrible decision. Now, like you said, maybe you could even defend that decision. It was the very early days. We didn't know, but you have to own up to it. And he did not own up to it. They covered it up in what is possibly a crime here in terms of not reporting data to federal prosecutors. I'm sure they'll probably get away with it, but it deserves absolute scrutiny. And from the media angle, this man was absolutely bowed down to and turned into a demigod in those early days of the pandemic. Why can't we have somebody like Cuomo? Why can't Trump just be like Cuomo? And the entire New York City, New York-based media just absolutely adored him. And at the time, he was literally killing old people, and they didn't want to dig into it. And now they're waking up to it. Because guess what? Because he has many of these people in the pocket, is refusing to answer any real questions and not really facing that much blowback. The only blowback he has is from Jake Tapper on CNN, who revealed that he refuses to even come on the network. Let's take a listen to this.
So Governor Cuomo, who has declined to appear on the show despite dozens of requests over the past year, including this past week, made a bad decision that may have cost lives. And then his administration hid that data from the public.
Oh, well, it's shocking that he won't come on the network, because CNN was basically his second home in those early days of the pandemic when he was granted, I don't even know how many hours of primetime coverage about how great he was by his literal brother, who had him on his primetime CNN show to joke about the size of his nose. It's not a joke. If you haven't seen this clip, your jaw is going to drop. Let's play it.
This is the normal swab I'm holding up here now, and for everybody at home. A very valuable object. There's only one company in the entire country that makes these up in Maine. All right, here's the swab. Is it true that this was the swab that the nurse was actually using on you, and that at first it went into your nose and disappeared, so that in scale, this was the actual swab that was being used to fit up that double-barrel shotgun that you have mounted on the front of your pretty face?
There you go.
First of all, that was cringe under any circumstance.
Yeah. How many thousands of old people were dead while that was being asked? How many? We don't know. We literally
not
didn't
one
know
question.
Yeah, not one.
Not one question. And look, what we said at the time is, okay, maybe you could get away with doing one interview with your brother. But night after night after night. And it was interesting what Jake Tapper said there, because he said not just had he requested him dozens of times, like for this particular week, to hold him to account. No, he said over the course of the year.
Yep.
Well, why wouldn't he go on with Jake Tapper? Because he could go on with his brother.
Exactly.
And get exactly this kind of treatment. And it goes back to, why was he lionized like this? Why was he held up in the media? I remember Rachel Maddow, this is very revealing, actually. She said at the time something to the effect of, we played it here, it feels like we have two presidents right now. We've got the good, wonderful, perfect president, Andrew Cuomo, doing the right thing and approaching coronavirus in the correct way. And then we have the evil, horrible president, Donald Trump. Now, that part was actually correct, and especially with regards to his handling of the coronavirus. But that's what this lionization was all about, to have the contrast with Donald Trump. And they didn't scratch below the surface whatsoever, because they didn't want to see it. They didn't want to question it. They didn't want to ask whether, he really was handling this crisis in the appropriate and correct and best possible way, because this reporting was all out there at the time. I mean, this was not a secret about not only the way he handled this nursing home decision, but also how much money he'd taken from the nursing home industry, how he'd pushed to get them liability shields so that they couldn't be held responsible if they were complicit in failing to care for people properly during this crisis. So all of that was out there. We covered it here, but all they wanted to see were the press conferences. All they wanted to see was the surface level. Oh, this guy's taking it so seriously. He's out in front of the public. And he does give a mean press conference. But guess what? The decisions that he makes and the way that they impact lives are a hell of a lot more important than the pretty words that he says at those pressers.
No, you're 100% right. And look, all of the data was right there to see. We could have asked questions about it. And back in May, it's been months and months and months that this has been out in the open. It's shameful that they allowed him to get away with it for so long. And even now, they've basically dropped the story. It was a 1-day, maybe 2-day story. Tapper covered it. No other real primetime attention. I mean, Fox obviously covers it because Fox, wants to. And that's fine. But I'm saying until it becomes an actual mainstream story and he's actually getting pressed on it in a serious way, then we're not really going to have answers, at least until we get more investigations from that Democratic Attorney General. And I would hope, although I'm not optimistic, that the Biden people don't let this go either, because you cannot have states which are basically obfuscating real-time data in order to cover up their, mistakes from federal prosecutors who are looking at this, or at least trying to, whenever they're looking for potential crimes and mismanagement in the middle of a global pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, if this was Ron DeSantis.
Oh, yeah, it would be all.
Or if it was Donald Trump.
Yeah.
This would be red alert.
And rightfully, if they did that,
100%.
go ahead.
100%. It is an outrageous scandal. Yeah. All right, we're going to tell you what's on our radar, so that's next.